Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. HTM here with an updated build video for the Magicka Sorcerer class. This is the Shockmaster build, one of the easiest and strongest builds on this channel, focused around an easy, heavy attack rotation with minimal skills needed and no trials gear or DLC gear necessary. This build functions extremely well as a solo build, with a companion, with a group. However you want to play it, it just gets the job done. So if you're looking for the ultimate easy setup for a Magicka Sorcerer build in ESO, this is going to be the video for you. Let's jump right into it. Alright everybody, we are back on the Magicka Sorcerer, this time with an updated build for the Deadlands DLC. Of course, this is going to be our easy, heavy attack Mag Sorc, one of the most powerful builds on my channel, and certainly probably the easiest, I would say. Very few skills, extremely easy rotation, and no DLC or trials gear, no mythics necessary. Just a great all-around build. So let's go ahead and jump into the buff stats here and check some things out on the character sheet. You're looking at about 40k max Magicka this patch, 25k max health, 12k max stamina. Recoveries are extremely good, 1000. Mag recovery, 1100 stam recovery. Got about 4500 spell damage. This easily goes over 5000 with our back bar glyph. We also get more spell critical when we have all of our buffs available. That'll be about 56, 57% overall. And of course, our armor does go up with the lightning form here. 23k spell resist and 18k physical resist is pretty good. Of course, we are running a front bar shield, so you have even more protection there. And we'll talk about some options for sets if you'd like to increase your survivability there as well. 64 points into max Magicka, of course, is going to be the way to go since we are the Mag Sorc. Running the Thief Mundus this patch for the extra spell critical. Definitely recommend that. For food, I recommend blue quality, max health, max Magicka. You can also substitute something like Witch Mother's Potent Brew if you feel like you need more sustain. But since this is primarily a heavy attack build, sustain really shouldn't be an issue for you. And we have tons of passive buffs, minor resolve, minor protection, prophecy. We'll talk about how we get all of these and more in just a couple minutes. Now, in terms of the potions, very basic on this build. You can run basic Magicka potions. That's totally fine. Since I don't have an active heal right now, I am using tri-stat potions. That's another really nice option if you have access to those. But that's pretty much it in terms of consumables. And then as far as the race goes, on the Mag Sorc, I still really like High Elf. High Elf gives you a couple of very nice passives here. Spell Recharge is one of my favorites. This gives you Magicka or Stamina back, whichever is lowest, every 6 seconds. It also causes you to take 5% less damage when channeling. And the way that we do our heavy attack on this build, which is with a Lightning Staff, is actually a channeled effect. So we always have that 5% bonus damage reduction. Pretty nice. Get the 2000 max Magicka, and then of course the spell damage. So High Elf is an excellent choice. Other good options would be like Dark Elf, Khajiit, even for the extra crit damage. Those would be kind of my top 3 there. I think that covers the basics, so we can move on into the sets. We're going to start with the Noble Duelist set, and I'm keeping this on from last patch because it is just so good. It's extremely easy to proc. And it gives you tons of extra heavy attack damage. So you can see you get an interesting bonus here, stamina recovery, and then lots of weapon and spell damage. And then for the 5-piece bonus, when you light or heavy attack within melee range, your light and heavy attacks deal about 1811 bonus damage for 5 seconds. So this will tell you right away the theme of this build. You need to be in melee range to get all of the bonus heavy attack damage. If you're playing this solo, which is primarily how I play the build, then that's no problem. You're going to be playing in melee range anyways because you don't have any other choice, right? So this 5-piece set is extremely easy to proc. You're going to have it up 100% of the time on your front bar for that juicy extra damage. Now, I do recommend, like I talked about, a Lightning Staff if you can get it. Ideally, you will want Precise as the trait, and then Shock Enchant is very good for proccing that negative status effect. You'll get a pretty high uptime on this build for that as well. So remember, this is a 2-handed weapon that counts for 2 set piece bonuses. And then we've got 3 pieces on the jewelry. We've got the Noble Duelist necklace and 2 rings. We're running spell damage for our glyphs on all 3 of those, and then 1 infused to Bloodthirsty as the trait. Okay, let's talk about the next 5-piece set, which is another great heavy attack set. This is called the Undaunted Unweaver. It's a light armor set. This gives you 2 bonuses to max magicka, a bonus to critical chance, and then when you use an ability that costs stamina while in combat, you increase the damage of your light and heavy attacks by 1685 for 10 seconds. So slightly less damage compared to Noble Duelist, but this is just as easy to proc. We'll talk about a couple of options that we can use for stamina abilities on the Mag Sorc, things we might even use anyways on a solo build or even the DPS build. Will get you this buff basically for free. So this is also extremely easy to proc. Now, both of our main 5-piece sets are base game dungeon sets, by the way. The Undaunted Weaver set comes from Blackheart Haven, I believe. Noble Duelist comes from the Crucible. They are both light armor sets, so you don't have to run it how I'm running it. Whatever drops you get is fine. You can mix and match the pieces here as long as you get 5 pieces of both. So the way I've got this set up, I've got my Noble Duelist on the front bar weapons and jewelry. And I've got Undaunted Unweaver on the body. So we've got the light chest, waist, hands, legs, and feet. Divines will be the best trait here just to maximize that Thief Mundus stone. And then Max Magicka as the glyphs on everything. So that covers the 2 main 5-piece sets. Then I did mix up the monster set a little bit this patch. Elambris is actually very good now on the Magicka Sorcerer for a couple of reasons. Number 1, in the Deadlands DLC, proc sets can now critically strike again. So you get Max Magicka on this. You also get 2 damage sources, both flame damage and shock damage. These happen at the same time. And since we have a very good crit chance overall, we get a pretty high crit percentage on these damage ticks. And so it does result in a good amount of overall DPS. Plus, I just think it fits in really well with the Sorcerer theme. We do have both flame damage and shock damage, a lot of both on this build. So it'll be up pretty much 100% of the time. Very easy to proc on the Magicka Sorcerer. As far as the weights and traits here, Divines, again, you want as many Divines pieces as possible. And then I went with light for the helmet and light for the shoulders as well. So we're doing 7 pieces on this build. I think it just works really well on the Magicka Sorcerer. You get the extra crit chance, you get the extra penetration. You'll have enough defense from your shields. Also, you can run this setup in a group or with a companion for even more survivability. So it's just a great way to go on this setup. Last but not least, that leaves us with the back bar weapon and the ideal choice for a heavy attack build. Doesn't matter if it's a Magicka build or even a stamina build, actually, going to be the Maelstrom Staff, Maelstrom Destruction Staff. The reason for that is when you have this on your back bar, let me switch over here so you can see the full bonus, you get your light and heavy attacks 1353 additional damage as long as you're using Wall of Elements. So as you can imagine, we're going to have Wall on the back bar with this staff to proc that extra damaging effect. So we've got 1353 from the Maelstrom Staff. We've got the bonus 1685 for Undaunted Unweaver and the bonus 1811 damage for Noble Duelist. So we're stacking those 3 main heavy attack bonuses. Plus we're getting more from champion points. If you use the right companion, you can also get an extra heavy attack bonus from them. So we'll talk about all of those sources a little bit more in just a couple minutes, but that's the basic setup again. So we've got Undaunted Unweaver on the body, Noble Duelist, front bar, staff, and jewelry, Maelstrom back bar, and then the Elambris monster set. Let's go ahead and transition into the skills over here, and this build, if you've seen it before, is extremely simple. This is meant to be one of the easiest builds in the game, and to go along with that, we have barely any active skills on the front bar. In fact, your only active skills on the front bar are your shield and your defensive buff. Everything else you're doing on this bar is just heavy attacking. That's basically it. So we've got some passive buffs here. We've got Inner Light from the Mages Guild. This is your first ability there. This is great for the extra max magicka. This also gives you passive Major Prophecy. That's about 12% bonus spell critical. And this is great because it frees up what kind of potions you need to run. Like I said, you can use basic magicka potions or Tri-Stat potions if you want a little bit more sustain. You don't have to worry about running spell power pots on this build at all. Then we've got Bound Aegis. This comes from the Sorcerer class line under Daedric Summoning. That's your last ability here. This is very similar to Inner Light. It gives you 8% max magicka plus minor resolve. So another great passive buff. Next up, we've got Hardened Ward. This is going to be our emergency damage shield. You want to cast this early on, sort of when the fight begins, just to avoid taking damage. So definitely keep that up as needed. And then we have another damaging sort of passive skill. This is called Camouflage Hunter. This comes from the Fighters Guild skill line. So that is the second to last ability here. This gives us Major Savagery, which doesn't really matter on this build since it's a Magicka build, not a stamina build. But this also gives us free Minor Berserk when hitting an enemy from the side or behind. So that's a bonus 5% damage done. Of course, that's going to apply to your heavy attacks as well, stacking with all those other buffs we have. So this is a great source of extra damage. Even better if you're with a companion where you can, have the companion tank for you, or if you're grouped with somebody. This is going to add a lot of extra damage to the build. Last normal ability here is Boundless Storm. This comes from the Storm Calling skill line. This is your second ability here. This is really nice for armor. It does a nice damage over time effect. And also movement speed. This is really good for just getting around maybe a dungeon or going through overland a little bit quicker. Plus, it looks really cool on the Mag Sorc. Ultimate here, you have some options. If I'm playing purely solo, most of the time I'm going to run Temporal Guard. This gives me bonus minor protection, so some extra damage reduction on the front bar is always good. You could, though, slot a more offensive ultimate here if you prefer something like the Destruction Staff ultimate. You could do something like Negate from the Sorcerer class line if you want a little bit more utility, maybe group utility. You can run that as either a heal or a damaging morph, or you can run the Storm Atronach from Daedric Summoning here on the front bar. Completely up to you. Check out the back bar, which is our Inferno Staff, the Maelstrom Staff. And this is where most of our damaging, our kind of dot effects come in, starting with Unstable Wall of Fire. So this comes from the Destruction Staff, second ability here. And we talked about this with the item sets. You need this with your Maelstrom Staff combined. That's going to give you that bonus 1,300 or so extra heavy attack damage. As long as you're casting Wall of Elements, then you get that bonus. It's pretty easy. This also procs your Infused Damage glyph on the back bar, so you're getting tons of bonus damage just for keeping this up. Next ability is going to be Lightning Flood. This comes from Sorcerer class skills Storm Calling, third ability here. It's just a nice damage over time, does shock AoE damage. You'll notice the duration here, 10 seconds, is the same as Unstable Wall, so it's very easy to time these out together. Now, our third ability here is Flexible, and right now I'm going with Daedric Tomb, and that comes from the Dark Magic skill line. And there's a very specific reason why I'm using this. You can use this for damage. Some sorcerer builds even use this as a spammable DPS skill. You can certainly do that if you put this on your front bar and kind of weave it in between heavy attacks if you want. But I'm just using this for a passive, and the passive is down here. It's called Exploitation, and this is pretty unique. Only sorcerers get this passive. It gives you the Minor Prophecy buff for you and your group, so that translates to about 6.5% extra spell critical, and you only get that on the sorcerer only when you use dark magic abilities. So you could do other things here if you want. You could run the Encase route. You could run, Dark Exchange for some more sustain. But I feel like just throwing on a Daedric Tomb once per rotation is a very easy thing to do, and it's getting me almost 7% extra spell crit, which I think is well worth it just for one ability. So that's how I'm using it. You'll see it in the rotation in just a minute. Next ability, we need something that costs stamina, and you have options for this too. Now, what I like for sort of single target bosses is Barbed Trap. Now, Barbed Trap is another melee ability, which this works completely well with this build since we are in melee range. This gives you a nice dot effect. It gives you the Minor Force buff, which increases your critical damage by 10%, which is amazing. And it also costs stamina. So throwing this into your rotation on your back bar, this is how we're going to proc Undaunted Unweaver 100% of the time. Like I said, this is great for boss fights. This is great for single targets because it is a dot effect and it gives you that bonus Minor Force. Now, I would say if you're doing more like XP grinding or clearing your way through a dungeon, you can get a little bit more damage by using something like Razor Caltrops. Razor Caltrops gives you AoE damage. Of course, it costs stamina, so that's going to proc Undaunted Unweaver on our back bar. And then this also gives you major breach on every single enemy in the AoE. So that's some nice utility as well. So 2 great options there. Go ahead and flex those in and out based on the situation. I'm going to go ahead and put Barb Trap back on for now. And then last up, super important skill. Do not miss this, you guys. Critical Surge is your main heal on the Magicka Sorcerer. It comes from Storm Calling. It's your second to last ability. This also gives you a 20% bonus spell damage and basically a free heal every 1 second. You will get this all the time as long as you're doing damage, as long as your dots are down on the ground, as long as you're doing that nice, juicy, heavy attack. You can count on 3k heals and most likely 6k. We're talking about crit heals. Since we have very high crit rating on this build, you're going to get big, juicy heals from that ability. Backbar ultimate, I like running the Storm Atronach here. This is one of the longest lasting ultimates in the game. It's great for soloing, great for group play. It does a lot of sustained damage, so it's a really good option. Of course, you could also run something like the Destruction Staff ultimate. If you need a little bit more burst damage, that's what I would recommend there. So that is the basic setup. Now we can do a quick rotation to show you how it works. I'm going to pull out the companion here just so you can see kind of, how this would work if you have a group or a tank set up. Ideally, you want to fight behind the enemy to proc Camouflage Hunter. So start by buffing your armor, your crit surge, and then you can pop your shield before you get into combat. And then back bar, drop all those dots. You have your ult, you can drop that too. And then front bar is just heavy attack. You do about 3 heavy attacks in a row. By that time, your back bar dot should be wearing off, so you're going to swap back. Lay those down again. Front bar, heavy attack 3 times or so. Go ahead and rebuff your armor and your crit surge when those fall off. You can see I'm not having any problems with sustain. Damage is really good. We're basically done with this fight. Make sure you use that trap on the back bar to buff Undaunted Unweaver. There you go. Super easy, powerful build. Especially if you have a group or a companion to tank for you, it gets even stronger. Okay, quickly, let's talk about passives. What do you need as far as class passives on this build? Well, Unholy Knowledge is very good in Dark Magic. This reduces the cost of your abilities. Definitely pick that up. And then the other one that we talked about is Exploitation. You want this for the extra 6% spell crit. And again, you only get that if you're using one of these abilities, so choose one on your back bar to make sure that passive works for you. Daedric Summoning has good passives as well. Best ones probably are Power Stone, so this reduces the cost of your ultimate by 15%. That's huge. Daedric Protection as well. This gives you that really high stamina recovery that you saw on the stat sheet. I actually have more stamina recovery on this build than Magicka recovery, and the reason is basically this passive. That's what's doing it for me. Expert Summoner, this is actually a really strong passive if you want to run a pet. You could remove some of the passive skills that we have and move things around. You could run like the Scamp on this build for a little bit more damage, and you would get more health as well with that passive. Storm Calling, though, this is really good. Capacitor gives you bonus mag recovery. Energize gives you the bonus shock damage. That's important. Amplitude gives you more damage based on how much health percentage your enemy has. And an Expert Mage is also good. Increases your weapon and spell damage for each sorcerer ability slotted. Make sure you pick that one up. Of course, we will want all of our Destruction Staff passives. Those are important. Light Armor passives as well. We're running 7 pieces of light. At least that's what I would recommend. Mostly for these last 2, right? We have Concentration. This gives us 6,000 bonus spell penetration. That's really good on the solo build. And then plus Prodigy. The extra crit chance is nice also. What else? Guild skills. Fighter's Guild is good. You do get, since we are running Camo Hunter, you do get bonus ultimate when you kill an enemy. So definitely pick up Banish the Wicked. Then you also get some bonus weapon and spell damage from Slayer. So those are kind of the main 2 you'd want to make sure that you get. Sometimes people ask about Mage's Guild and if you can incorporate this in a heavy attack build. Yes, you can. One of the best passives for heavy attacks actually is available in the Mage's Guild. It's called Empower. You can get this for 3 seconds anytime you use a Mage's Guild ability. This buffs your heavy attacks by 40%, which is huge. But the duration, at least from this passive, is super short. So it makes it a little bit difficult. I have another build using Scalding Rune just to kind of take advantage of that. I thought it wasn't really worth it for this build, but you could definitely play around with that if you're interested. Strategic order, if you do decide to go with this on the front bar, make sure to pick up Concentrated Barrier. This gives you a free damage shield just by blocking on that front bar, so that is helpful. If you're going to get hit with a big heavy attack or something, you can roll off some of that damage onto that shield. Of course, make sure to pick up your racial skills. We talked about that. And then Alchemy Medicinal Use. Make those potions last 30% longer. Let's check out champion points very quickly here. I want to keep this kind of short. If you want to see the full CP breakdown for 300, 600, 900, and 1200 CP, as always, that's in the written guide. Check out the link down below for that one. But in terms of the green CP tree here, I always start with Steed's Blessing. Gives you the bonus movement speed. Then usually I'll work my way up to Treasure Hunter for the better quality of items and treasure chests, as well as Rationer and Liquid Efficiency. Now over in the blue tree, we do have something specific for heavy attacks, which makes this build a little bit different. So I want to show you that. Basically, you'll start with Precision. That unlocks Extended Might. And then if you do Piercing and then come down here, you have the slotted star called Weapons Expert. So once you max this out, this is a bonus 15% damage done to your light and heavy attacks. Now, since our heavy attacks is basically all of our front bar damage, you will want to unlock this first. This is going to make the biggest difference on this build. Once you have that, I would come back and then go probably into Thaumaturge next. Remember, this is going to buff all of our damage over time abilities. This also buffs your heavy attacks because technically on a lightning staff, those do work as a dot effect. So you will get some bonus to your heavies with this as well. And then finally, I would run the 2 critical damage buffs here, Fighting Finesse. And then also, if you have a companion, if you have a group where you're not, taking all the damage yourself, Backstabber is great. You just need to make sure you're behind the target or to the side. You should be doing that anyways to proc Camouflage Hunter. You're going to get 15% bonus critical damage done from that slotted star. So those are the main 4 I would go with. If you have any more points beyond that, you can pick up some of your passives here, Eldritch Insight for more max Magicka, and then come down here, get Quick Recovery and Preparation. This is really good for reducing your damage taken. Finally, in the red tree, it's really basic, you guys. Pretty much my normal setup. We've got Rejuvenation for the recovery, Fortified for the armor, Boundless Vitality for the health. And for the 4th and final slotted star, I would probably take Siphoning Spells. This is going to be great for if you have multiple enemies coming at once. You get a ton of sustain back from this. If you're struggling a little bit against like a single boss, you could probably switch that over for Bastion. Just if you find yourself using that shield a lot, this will give you some bonus damage shield. That's another way to go. Now, I did mention the companion here briefly. Normally, I don't go over this in the build video. You can find more about the companion build that I'm using in the written guide. I just wanted to make sure you guys know about this ability. And the reason why I picked Bastion as my go-to companion for this Mag Sorc build, it's because of this skill called Searing Weapons. So that's actually one of his class skills. It is down here in Radiating Heart. So you do need to get him pretty high level, but it's definitely worth it. Check this out. This is a 15% bonus to your light and heavy attacks. This has pretty high uptime overall, depending on, the gear sets that you use on your companion. But this is its own buff, right? This stacks with everything else. This stacks with your CP. This stacks with your gear sets that you're using, Minor Berserk, everything that you have on your build. Your heavy attacks are going to stack with this extra 15% damage. So you're going to end up doing much more damage if you have a companion, especially if you set them up as a tank so that you can fight the boss or something from behind and take advantage of all those extra buffs that we looked at. So definitely recommend that as your companion. So definitely check out Bastion as your companion if you have access to that. It does give you a lot of extra damage. And then like I said, I'll have the full build on the website if you'd like to check that out. Link is down below. And then last but not least, outfit style. Why not? Let's check it out. Down in armor styles, I'm using light armor style, I believe, for all the pieces here. Just keeping it simple. This is the Malakath style. Again, light armor, all the body pieces. And then for the weapon style, the staff that I'm using here, this is from the Reach. It's called the Arcsand Armory Staff. All right, everybody, and with that said, that's going to wrap up our easy heavy attack Magicka Sorcerer build for ESO. Hope you guys enjoyed this one. You found it informative. Of course, if you did, do us a favor, crush that like button. It really helps out the channel. It helps YouTube know to share this video out to as many other people as possible, which is definitely appreciated. Now, as I mentioned, if you have any questions, we do have a complete written guide over on my website, hacktheminotaur.com. Link is down below. In the written guide, we have a lot more details. We have alternate gear sets, alternate skills. I go over the complete tank build for Bastion, which is really helpful on this setup, honestly. Plus all the different options for champion points, 300, 600, 900, and 1200 CP breakdowns. So definitely check that out if you'd like to see more information on this setup. Of course, if you want to see more videos like this, make sure you hit that subscribe button. I do regular ESO builds, guides, and commentaries on this channel. Also, if you'd like to support further, we do have a YouTube membership program right here. Lots of great perks, things like early access to videos. We have a huge library of members-only builds and guides that we're adding to each and every month. A lot of great content there as well. So check that out. Click on the join button down below if you're interested. And as always, thank you all so much for watching. I hope you're doing well. Stay safe out there, and I will see you around in the next video.